Hello, my name is Bryce Tubbs. With me today is Troy Reeves. He's a psychotherapist, certified counselor, life coach. He's a speaker, and he's a trainer with the John Maxwell team. And he's a former military registered nurse. I'm super excited to be able to share a story with you guys today. And thanks so much for coming on, Troy.
Thanks for having me, Bryce.
I butchered your last name, even though we just spoke about it a second ago.
It's the Spanish pronunciation. I have a lot of people that are like Reeves, and I'm like, nope, Reeves, one syllable, but that's all good.
I didn't write it down phonetically.
It's all good.
But for those watching, if you're watching this from any location outside of our free community, I just want to personally invite you to come and join us inside. Inside, it's a mastermind where people come together and support each other every single day. So if that's what you've been missing in these interesting times that we're in, come and join us inside. Now back to Troy. What was life like before you got into therapy and coaching, and what was the catalyst that brought you into the field?
Well, I've had a very diverse background. I began my career in sales years and years ago, and that sort of helped me learn how to handle money. That eventually moved into life insurance and financial planning, which taught me a bit more about wisdom. And then I eventually got into healthcare. It's been something that was close to my heart. The military seemed to be the best option at the time, and I served for 12 years and started off as a medic, and then eventually became an officer and became a nurse, and then wanted to I think that was my major catalyst, was trying to find a way to add value to people even before I knew the messaging around that. And as a nurse, I've always been that advocate. It's not that I couldn't be a doctor, but I chose to be a nurse because I've chosen to love people and to help add value to people in their journey. That eventually led into private practice, which is what I'm doing now, where I realized the limitations of some of our public health. And I see so many people going into the system with major mental illness or depression, anxiety, or whatever the issues might have been. And then they leave with a prescription, or they leave with more questions than they had going in. And that's where I wanted to make the first change, is in helping people navigate the storm of their life. That's what sort of led me to create Anchor of Hope Counseling. And from there, I wanted to add another lens on what I do, because therapists typically focus on the past, where people get stuck. For me, it was about transitioning with my clients through their past into the stress of their present. And now as a life coach and speaker, I'm trying to work through, how do we become the best version of ourselves that we want to be? And no matter where people are at in that continuum, past, present, or future, I have a way that I can still follow and transition with my clients.
Nice. Yeah, that's actually why I started working with life coaches as well. Because I always did it for psychotherapists and psychologists, but it's really rewarding to be able to see, you get them to the baseline, then you help them really thrive. So I'm glad that you picked that up and you're really doing some great work.
Thanks,
Can I ask you this question? So right now, we're all in this time of transition. Some people are, going out of quarantine. Some people are still in it. Some people are going back into it. What has been the biggest takeaway that you've gotten from this quarantine time?
For me, I actually have two. I've seen the negative side of what's coming out of this pandemic, which is fear. I have never seen so much fear, and how people are leading themselves based on fear. As a nurse, I've got to be careful, because I have very strong opinions about how we're managing this pandemic, medically speaking, because I see a lot of problems with how we've lived by fear. But on the other side, some of the positives that I've noticed is people have dropped that excuse of, I'm too busy to do the important things in life. We're connecting in ways that we've never seen. This kind of format has become part of the new normal, which is allowing me to grow in different ways, because my clientele now is spanning Canada, the US, and even in Belize, where I'm able to use platforms like this and be in someone's home in less than 2 seconds. So this can be a very good catalyst. And we're seeing rises in social platforms like Zoom. I think the last time I studied it, it was 800% they were up. Maybe it's more by now, but we're seeing this whole push to get back to connecting, and we're not using that excuse, well, I'm too busy. It's almost like God or the universe or whatever said, you know what, you guys are too busy, hold my beer, Now you have to deal with what's really going. Not that I'm saying God
Yeah.
caused COVID. We don't believe that, but there's an opportunity in every crisis, and that's key to a lot of the things that I teach my clients. Is let's look for those opportunities, which I think we're starting to see right now.
Yeah. That's funny. You know, law of attraction. People always talk about we speak into existence what we talk about. I'm too busy. I'm too busy. Okay. Now, you know, that's an interesting point. When people are talking about they're too busy, so they were too busy. Now the main thing that I hear is I have nothing to do.
Mm.
Can you talk about how to be content with where you are right now?
That's a good one. I think what is really valuable for people to start working through is changing the question. A
Mm.
lot of times when people get stuck, majority of my clients come into my office with a why question. Why is this happening? I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek and his power of why, but at the same time, in crisis, as a psychotherapist, I don't find a lot of use for why because most people don't know how to use the right why question. It's not motive driven, it's crisis driven. Why is this happening? Why did my wife do this to me? Why didn't I see this before? Why did I get laid off? Why am I experiencing this health crisis? Those kind of why questions lead us to look into the rearview mirror,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost like we're driving looking back and we're gonna inadvertently hit something that we shouldn't hit.
Yeah.
So in terms of contentment, how do we get people to be at peace within the storm? I think that's an interesting idea because this comes back to something that I do a lot of teaching around: thankfulness. I've heard people talk about great gratitude journals, stuff like that. These are all very healthy practices in terms of what are we focusing on? What's our orientation point? There are some people that for the life of them, they cannot find anything good to think about. And because that's their inner monologue, they don't know how to shift a mindset, they get very stuck. So what I try to teach people is how can we be thankful in the storm, not thankful for the storm? Very different shift that has to happen. We're not thankful for COVID, but we can learn to be thankful in spite of it because of how it's teaching us to reprioritize things that matter: relationships, influence. How are we growing through this? I had posted something on social media a couple weeks ago where it's frustrating being a psychotherapist because my job is to teach people how to think, not tell them what to think. That's a little bit different from other disciplines because I'm just trying to get people to use this amazing muscle in a different way. And what I'm starting to see here are patterns where people don't want to become aware because when they become aware, they become responsible for change. And that's probably one of the hardest things that we're dealing with now is how do we be content? We need to start becoming more aware. We need to understand where can we still grow? How can we change the question from why, which is looking in the rearview mirror, to a what or a how? And those are the two questions that I use almost all the time. And sometimes my what comes across as a so what. And I do that intentionally to shift people out of a false mindset that says, well, this happened to me. And then I'm going to look at them in love and say, okay, so what does that mean for you now?
Yeah.
And how do we take that next step in terms of moving forward?
That's interesting that you have that question come up a lot. Yeah, that's so true. People are always talking about, you know, no one's watched my video. Okay, cool. So how do we get people to do it? How do we get the next step? What's the next step? Wow, that's really cool. There's a lot of parallels that I'm seeing between the way that we work. You know, just thinking about kind of the future and kind of like we're talking about vision. You know, what's the vision for as far into the future for your life as you want to talk or think about?
I love vision. For me, there's a there's a very popular proverb that I live by that says, without vision, people perish.
Yeah.
And I'm all about casting vision with people. That's probably where the coaching side of my business comes from because when people do well, or when people know how to do well, they do well. And then my job is to walk with them, work through whatever it is they need to go through, and then start helping them reorient to a vision. One of the other questions that I do a lot of work around is identity. I have so many people, often younger people right now, but sometimes I'm dealing with people in their 60s that are having this identity crisis.
Mm.
And people come in going, who am I? And that's one of the first questions I want to break into 1,000 pieces and say, you know what? That's not important. I would rather you focus on who do you want to become? And that's active. That requires what we're doing right now in the moment. And that's part of vision casting. If they don't know who they want to become, they're definitely not going to get there. So we spend a little bit of time doing some dream building. We spend a little bit of time trying to figure out, all right, so if all things are equal, what would you like to see yourself doing? Long-term, intermediate, short-term goals. Let's be specific using SMART goal analogies, whatever those may be, and helping people come to a point where they understand this is where I want to be, this is where I am, and this gap is what we call growth. And as long as we're somewhere in this journey, I'm happy. And I want them to sort of move forward. As far as my own vision, what I'm seeing is moving slowly away from the one-on-one counseling that I've been doing for the last bunch of years. I'll probably always still have a couple days of the week because it's so close to my heartbeat and I want to still do the one-on-one work. But eventually what I want to start doing is attracting people that truly want to grow. And having a therapist and a coach in their back pocket, I think is an interesting hybrid where I know I can add a lot of value in terms of whether it's professional coaching or individuals who simply are discontent with where they're at and they're ready to do the work to grow. So long term, I see myself doing a lot more public speaking. I've been a keynote speaker already for some leadership events, and I want to keep doing more work like that where I get the chance to impact 5 or 10,000 people in a moment instead of one-on-one. I'm in the process right now of turning all of my psychotherapy content into online videos where I can almost diversify a little and I don't have to be present. I could have a membership platform where people just subscribe and they pay a one-time fee and then they get access to all my content for life. It's not ready yet, but that's kind of where my mind wants to grow to, and do all the work of recording everything and having narrated PowerPoint presentations, whatever, so that I can still leave my content behind and then move on towards public events. So that's kind of where I see myself growing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool that you're able to start making that transition. I'll tell you something about that later, man. That's really great. You know, let me ask you this question. You know, where can people go to either learn more about you, or where can they go to connect with you further?
Probably the easiest way to connect with me right up front is my website. It's anchorofhopecounseling.ca. Because I'm Canadian, it's the Canadian spelling, so it's got 2 L's, not one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's probably the easiest way. I've got videos there. I've got different things, my whole background, fees, everything, my mindset. And that would probably be the best place to start connecting. I also do free consults with anybody, no matter where people are at. I like this Zoom idea because I can be in people's home in 2 seconds. But if people have questions and they want to know whether there's a fit, then for sure, I do 15, 20-minute consults. If they're in the Calgary, Alberta area, you're more than welcome to come to my local office, and I still meet with people and have a coffee with them. But if they're international or out of province or out of state clients, then let's connect online.
Yeah. And, you know, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate just speaking, getting to know you a little bit better.
Thank you so much for having me, Bryce. It was a surprising invitation, and I always love the idea of collaborating with other professionals. And I hope and pray for a blessing on what you do as you continue to add value to others as well. So
yeah, I got to tell you a story about how we initially met. It's different. It's different than what you actually think it is. It's different than what I thought it was, even like when we were first talking.
okay.
It wasn't until you started talking I was like, oh, I remember where I first saw this person. You know, and you know, for those watching, you know, that's kind of the reason why we do these interviews, to really be able to share our story and really build that connection. Now, if you know, in these times you're feeling isolated or you don't really exactly know really how to move forward in your coaching business or your psychotherapy business, I recommend you go and check out one of our free communities inside the mastermind where I provide resource tips, training, and tools to show you step by step how to start moving your practice forward. So if that's what you've been missing in your life and you just want to get around some like-minded people, go ahead and join us by clicking on the link either above or below the video. I cannot wait to see you inside and see how we can help you and add value to your life. Now, hopefully you enjoyed watching this as much as we enjoyed creating it. Feel free to hit that share button so other people can get some great value as well. Have a great day. I will talk to you soon. We're done recording in 3 and 2 and 1.